Vanakkam to Inayathinnai. This is our 7th successful week on Inayathinnai since the lockdown to help engage and entertain the community in a variety of different ways. Dreams are not what you should be seeing in sleep. They are the things that should not allow you to sleep until you fulfill them. Dream is to achieve. We have with us our very own special guest today to Inayathinnai, Pavithra Srinivasan. She is an accomplished person in a variety of fields. We have a few lines for her. Creative minds on the workshop table, author to write to inspire any fable, columnist for the Hindu, seen a lady very able, miniature artist to bring art to the tiny stable, organic farmer shows a varied interest, very variable. Many a task she takes and fulfills them all to the highest standards possible. We have with us Pavithra Srinivasan. Today will be an engaging program followed by an introduction and a workshop as to how to write a story with our very own kids. We have a small AV clip for her. Thank you, Pavithra, for joining us today.
Thank you for having me. That was lovely.
We have a workshop today, following by a short introduction with Sridhar and yourself, and then following through with a Q&A, a short Q&A session as well.
Okay. Sounds good. Thanks for that introduction again. I mentioned this on Facebook. The Hollywood trailer பார்க்கற மாதிரி இருக்கு அப்படினு. It felt really nice. Thank you.
Welcome, Pavithra. Thank you for joining us in Inayathinnai. I think it's almost 18 years of known you from the old Ponniyin Selvan days.
Yes.
And you've come a long way. So I still remember your Princess blogs, which started off as blogs, but now you're an accomplished author who has translated Kalki's magnum opuses of Sivagamin Sabadam and Ponniyin Selvan into English, as well as translated Jeffrey Archer and Amish Tripathi into Tamil. Can you just take us through that journey of from being a blogger to an accomplished author, please?
Okay. So I started reading Ponniyin Selvan when I was 12. I've mentioned this in my blog entries, in my foreword. My mother introduced me Ponniyin Selvan when I was 12 because she said, okay, you are familiar with Tamil, but if you need to be really proficient, you need to read the language. You have to understand the language. It's not enough if you just speak Tamil at home. You have to be able to read it. She gave me these 5 huge books. In those days, when she was a school student, she used to collect the issues as they appeared in a weekly, in the Kalki weekly magazine. So they used to come with these beautiful illustrations, and she'd tear them out every week and she'd bind them. And that was her legacy to me. 5 volumes, published somewhere in 1968, 1969, 1970. Those were the years. So she handed them to me when I was 12 and said, go and read all this. I said, I don't even understand half the words in there. Those names are all completely unfamiliar. How am I supposed to get through the story? Nah? That is Ponniyin Selvan, kind of. படிச்சு பாரு உனக்கே தெரியும். So every night after school, I finished my homework and I sit down with the book. And the first volume was horrible. I couldn't understand half the words. I messed up all the names. But then somewhere during halfway through the first volume, it was like magic. The characters just, they took off from the pages, and it just, my imagination just flight. And I had to imagine all the rivers and the scenery and the temples and the villages. And I lived in Tamil Nadu, but I had never seen these places. So it was like a whole new window into a world that I never knew. That's how it started. And then I thought, okay, so this is an amazing story. My interest in history, that is how it began. Until then, it was all general school books, storybooks, that sort of stuff. But then with Ponniyin Selvan, it was something different. History came alive. Until then, it was just lots of dates and names, boring, boring, boring. It was so boring. And my teachers didn't make it any better. They just sit in front of the class and they open the book and they start reading, and then halfway through we all fall asleep, or I'll get a migraine. Either of those things. So it was Ponniyin Selvan that changed everything. For the first time, I realized that these were real people, not just, random things that you read about in a book. All these things have really happened 1,000 years ago. So from then on, I began to do my own research. I tried to find out more books. Something like Ponniyin. There's nothing like Ponniyin Selvan. Nothing comes even close to it. But I kept, trying to discover new authors, new books, new stories. And then at some point, I thought, why not just start writing myself? So that's how I started writing the stories. I was 13 when I wrote my first story, and that was not a historical story, just ordinary stuff. But it kindled my interest. That's how I started writing. But the thing is, sometime in my 20s, I realized that not everybody could read Tamil that fluently. So a lot of the things that I understood, things that were very familiar to me, other people didn't understand. They couldn't get to understand it because the language made it impossible. And even if if you could speak Tamil, reading it is something entirely different. So I thought, if I could get it into another language, English, that would be a huge thing. They could understand what I understood. They could feel the things that I felt. That would be amazing. They would get to know a part of the world that only I knew. So that's how the translation journey began. I started way, like he said, in 2002, I think, years ago. I started with Sivagami Sabadam, and then it just went on, and it went on to Ponniyin Selvan, and I began to translate other books also, not just this one. This, starting with Kalki's work, led to other things. So my love for translation actually began with Ponniyin Selvan as well, because I wanted others to see the world that I saw.
It's very difficult for people who haven't actually dwelled into Kalki's works to appreciate the passion which people who have read
that is why I felt that I could connect to them, because I lived in a city. I did not grow up in it. My parents grew up in a village. I grew up in Chennai, in a cosmopolitan city. I did not grow up in villages. I didn't know the world that Kalki wrote about. I didn't know about haystacks and coconut trees and rivers and canals. Nothing of the sort. The Ponniyin Selvan was my first introduction to that world. Because I read the book, I wanted to find out if these places really existed. And imagine if this is how it looked 1,000 years ago, what did they look like now? And did these kings really live in these huge palaces? Did these temples really exist? And the first time I saw the Tanjai Periya Koil, I was like, oh my God, this is where Rajaraja Cholan actually walked and sat, and he designed and he wrote these inscriptions. That was amazing. It's history that adds spice to a place. Otherwise, it's just another place.
So from Ponniyin Selvan, you've just hit the nail on the head. That history is important. We need to know our culture and our background, and that's more important for kids who grow up elsewhere, because most of the children who are here are British born or have grown up here. So to actually understand what the history is very, very, very pertinent. And I think that's where I'm going to keep quiet.
I really like working with children. I want to know, from being the young world kind of author for Hindu and moving on to Dinamalar, then books like Back to the BCs and Yestertales, relating to so much to history, but more drive towards being a children's author. What drove you towards being a children's author? What is that excites you being a children's author?
I think it was because for one thing, I grew up reading really old school books like Enid Blyton and all that. Harry Potter didn't come when I was a kid. That came much later. So in the world I lived, there were a lot of books for adults. My mother and my parents used to read a lot. They always kept reading, but naturally I couldn't read the kind of books that they read. So I was like, where are the stories for someone like me? I mean, even Ponniyin Selvan is made of adult characters, right? It's actually meant for adults, not kids. So I was like, I need to read stories about kids like me, meant for kids like me. The things that touched on, I don't know, adventure or mystery, but not all Ore Sogama or dealing with marriage and romance and all that sort of all adult things. I wanted it a little more, forget about all those serious stuff, something that I can relate to. And then because I read Ponniyin Selvan, I wanted to find out about kids that might have lived in other times. See, like Harshavardhana. Harshavardhana, he was a great emperor, but he became a king when he was like 15 or something. So when you put that across to an adolescent, 14 or 15, you immediately relate to that person. He may have been a huge king, he may have been a great emperor, but he was still a kid. His parents died, his mother literally committed sati with his father, and within a matter of months he was an orphan, and he was a teenager. So what would he have felt like? What were his feelings? What was he doing? He may have grown up in a palace, but he's still a kid. I wanted to read about somebody like that, somebody I could relate to. Go beyond what you read in a printed word. You read all these history lessons and it doesn't make any sense. It's just paper, words on paper. And I wanted to go beyond that. What were their motivations? What were they thinking? What would they be doing? If say Arulmozhivarman was a teenager when his brother died, right? According to Ponniyin Selvan, anyway. So he hasn't even started life yet, and I wanted to know what these real people were like. So that prompted me to start writing. Why not, fill in the gap? Why wait for somebody else to do it for me? Why not do it myself?
Excellent. That's really good.
Pavithra, you are a writer, blogger, translator, but you also have another aspect, isn't it? So Pavithra is also a miniature artist. These are all landscapes from various parts of Madras.
Yeah.
And you have to appreciate all these pictures have been magnified so that you can see them. So they're all
They're actually the size of your palm. Just that.
And if you look at it, how the black and white images and the colors bring in all the beauty of the city that we all call Chennai today, and most of us know as Madras. Aishwarya?
Yes. I have a question for you, Pavithra.
Yeah, please.
Drawing something from your imagination is relatively an easy job.
Oh, really? Okay.
Yeah, seeing your work, it's relatively an easy job for me.
Okay.
But when you replicate something which is there in real life,
Okay.
and that too with the size of a palm, especially the harbor view from the Royapeta Bridge and the Kanimera Library picture.
Okay.
How do you maintain the balance between the perspective and the proportion?
Okay. Yeah, that's a good question, because in a miniature you have to maintain proportions or it all goes horribly wrong. One of my friends actually,
if there's a scratch in the door also, you capture that. And I read in one article that you visit that place before you start drawing.
Yes.
So do you take a picture, or you are just drawing from your photographic memory, or how is it?
It's actually best if you actually try to draw from life, but Namurla, that's not possible. You cannot just, for example, the Royapuram picture itself, you cannot just stand in the middle of traffic and start drawing.
Yeah.
So I visit more than once. I go there several times, and I try to get as many pictures as possible, because I don't know what angle I'm going to choose. The Royapuram bridge for one thing, and the view it's actually from the overbridge. I'm not sure. You're Chennai, right? Are you from Chennai?
I'm from Chennai.
So if you're familiar with that part of the city, then you know that that view is possible only from that angle on the bridge. And then you can get that view. Anywhere else it's possible. So every single time I pause there, traffic is like crazy. And எல்லாரும் வழியில நீ எதுக்கு நிக்கிறீங்கன்னு கேட்பாங்க. Then போலீஸ்காரர் வந்துருவாரு, அதுக்கப்புறம் ட்ரக் வந்துரும், லாரி வந்துரும், பஸ் வந்துரும், கார் வந்துரும். And then if they see you standing there with at that place of Chennai is also very security based, it's very dangerous. Because why எல்லாருக்கும் தெரியும். Because it has this reputation of not being very safe and all that. So everybody is like, why are you standing here and taking pictures கேட்பாங்க. அதுக்கப்புறம் எதுக்கா எடுக்கிறீங்கன்னு கேட்பாங்க. நான் படம் வரைவேன் சார் அப்படின்னா impossible for them to believe. So you have to be I actually made at least 15 trips there. 15 trips I made, and each time I would take about 50 pictures, and then I would go home every possible angle I can, and then I would choose one, and then I would sit down to draw it. அவ்வளவு எடுக்கலைன்னா, அவ்வளவு தடவை பார்க்கலைன்னா, then it doesn't stick in your memory, and you can't go beyond that. So that's how I do.
Is it the same with the Kanimera library picture as well?
Those were easier because it was not that bad. But yes, essentially the same process. I visit the place. I have to visit the place. I usually read up on it before I visit the place, so I know, and I don't pick the obvious angle. If a Kanimera library abdina, I don't just go there. I don't take the front view and just paint it or draw it. I pick a view where you won't find it easy to recognize what place it is. That is the charm. அப்போ இது என்ன இடம் பார்த்த மாதிரி இருக்கு. I recognize
it creates the curiosity for
I know this place. I know where it is, but I can't place it. That is how it comes.
Pavithra, you also have a new avatar now.
Oh, okay.
Which is your passion for environment friendly venture. And Deepa Selvam from Leamington's got a question for you.
Hi. Nice to meet you. What has inspired you to become an organic farmer? Like I know it's very difficult to get an output in organic farming.
That's true.
And it's a lot of effort as well. So I would like to know what inspired you and what do you do as part of organic farming?
Okay, this is organic farming. Actually, it was introduced to me by my mother. She was the one who was very passionate about it, and now enjoy pandrom, we have to give something back. That has been her passion, and she was like, and whatever I do, you have to be a part of it. The organic farming I was not, like you said, literature, history, that is my thing. Farming எனக்கு செடின்னு காமிச்சா அவ்வளவுதான் எனக்கு தெரியும். அந்த ரேஞ்சில் தான் இருந்தது. But she was like, you need to do better than that. I will teach you everything you want to know. At least, you need to be part of this. This is how we give back. Adula you have to understand. So she introduced me to the whole world of organic farming. So then we bought a piece of land outside, or at least 1.5 hours journey outside Chennai. It's near Vandavasi. That's again a historic town with roots that go back at least 1,000 years. So there we bought a land. It was our ancestral property. No, absolutely no connection to my Purvigam or nothing like that. Completely new place, unconnected people, தெரியாத ஊரு, தெரியாத people எல்லாமே. So there we found a plot 6 acres. So she was like, I want to try everything that I've learned here. She literally guided my steps there, what to plant and how to till the land. உழவு ஓட்டுறது, சேடை உழவு, புழுதி உழவு, என்ன நடனம், எப்ப நடனம், saplings and என்ன நாத்து, what kind of rice you're going to grow, which part is low, which part is high, every single thing she introduced me to everything. So that is how I learned something. நான் எல்லாம் சொல்ல மாட்டேன்.
rice adu madri along with vegetables everything.
எஸ் ரைஸ் தான். ஆக்சுவலி எங்க ஏரியா வந்து கொஞ்சம் எப்படி சொல்றது, ராக்கின்னு சொல்லுவாங்க. டு நோ ஹவு திருவண்ணாமலை பக்கத்துல இட் இஸ் ஜெனரலி சப்போஸ் டு பி a ராக்கி டெரைன். ஈவன் இன் சோழா டைம்ஸ்ல கூட சோழா பீரியட்ல வந்து அந்த ஏரியாவுக்கு வந்து லேண்டுக்கு பேர் கொடுக்குறச்சே பல்குன்ற கோட்டம்னு வரும். லாட்ஸ் ஆஃப் ஹில்ஸ். ஸோ இஃப் யூ பீன் தேர் யூ நோ தட் இட் இஸ் வெரி ராக்கி. ரொம்ப கொஞ்சம் கரடு முரடான ஏரியா, வளமான டெல்டா பகுதியெல்லாம் கிடையாது. But it so happens where we have our land, it is connected by a lot of lakes, lots of small ponds and lakes. So our எங்களுக்கு வந்து ஏரி பாசனம் directly underneath the lake. So yeah, we generally go for rice and கடலை. கடலை தான் எங்க 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 ஏரியாவுடைய ஸ்டாம்ப் வந்து கடலை தான். But yes, we have also done vegetables.
Very good. Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you.
What we thought we'll do now, Pavithra, is we'll start with the story that I really like. And the story will be started by Anandita.
A meeting of minds. Day 14, month of Vaishaka, 323 BC, outskirts of Pataliputra. Night was falling. Ayan looked up at the darkening sky as the stars gently winked into existence. Birds twittered on their way home. The beautiful gilded reds of sunset still lingered in the west. In the distance, trees broke the flat line of the horizon. Ayan stroked his beard thoughtfully. Men and women were trudging homewards on the thoroughfare. He himself needed a place to bed down for the night. He was on the outskirts of a bustling city where there would be surely some shelters for travelers, he thought, but there were none. Ah, these thoughtless Nanda kings, came a voice. They rule over almost the whole of Bharatavarsha, but do we have a simple shelter for weary travelers on the roadside? Of course not. Ayan glanced around, astonished to hear his own thoughts voiced aloud. Who was this kindred spirit? He soon found the speaker, a man leaning wearily against a large neem tree, his cloth bundle resting on the ground. His head was wrapped in a turban and he was wearing a panchagacham. Greetings, Ayan said, drawn towards the stranger. Do you seek shelter as well? I think I always have, in a way, said the other man, his face lined with fatigue. He smiled suddenly and the weariness vanished as if by magic. Greetings to you too. Traveling far? A sudden doubt shook Ayan. This man was a complete stranger. He did not even know the man's name. What if he was one of those dacoits Ayan was always hearing about, who went around slitting the throats of unwary travelers? The stranger slumped down to sit beside the tree. There was a smile on his face, as though he knew exactly what Ayan was thinking. My name is Vishnu, and I hope you're not going to cut my throat for my meager belongings. I'm very poor, to tell the truth. And he opened his bag to display some puffed rice, a few small packets of what looked like salt, sugar, and a few spices, and a bundle of palm leaves.
Hi, my name is Mithan and I'll carry on reading.
Yes, please.
Yeah. Ayan heaved a small sigh, feeling slightly embarrassed. He too sat down under the tree, opening his own cloth bundle in the show of the goodwill. People call me Ayan, he said hesitantly. Vishnu's eyes seemed to brighten. Ah, then you're from the south of the Hindas. Excellent. I have journeyed to your lands a long time ago. And is the goddess bountiful where you come from? Yeah, very much so. At least she was when I was little. When I left. That was 2 months ago. You didn't start traveling to escape the clutches of the tyrannical king by any chance, did you? Vishnu's question sounded nonchalant, but Ayan had seen enough of people's hereabouts to guess at the fatigue hidden in those words. He tensed a little. Had he inadvertently thrown in his lot with an outlaw? Don't worry, I haven't fallen foul of King Dhanananda yet, Vishnu clarified. On the other hand, it only seems a matter of time before I do. Ian did not always trust strangers, but something about this man prompted him to. And in any case, wasn't he too a victim of such high-handedness from those in power? Isn't it the lot of poets to always grovel and to await the pleasure of kings? He asked bitterly. Vishnu turned to gaze at him. So you too have seen the not so noble side of our rulers, he murmured. Ian wanted to ask what had prompted such world weariness, but hesitated. There was danger in learning of such things.
You're wise, Vishnu murmured, sensing a reason for his companion's hesitation. One can never be too careful after all. Spies abound everywhere, and we have no liberty to flay kings, even if it's only through words. For the second time, Ian stared at Vishnu, amazed. How is it that you echo my thoughts all the time? Was I? I wasn't aware of it. It looks like we have more in common than I thought. Wait, you said you were a poet, didn't you? Of sorts. He pulled out a dozen palm leaves. This is part of my work. I've been writing on various socio-cultural issues for the betterment of man, about controlling emotions, about rules for good conduct, and even about matrimony. I've been trying out something new, you understand, setting my poems as couplets instead of the standard 4 lines. He paused, then threw caution to the winds. My audience with the king of Madurai about these poems turned out to be a disaster, though. I was practically thrown out. Vishnu was glancing through some of the verses, astonished. These are in Tamil, as I understand. Yes, I am familiar with the language, he said, as Ian raised an eyebrow. Wounds inflicted by fire may be cured. Those caused by a stinging word can never be cured. Vishnu read out. Wonderful. If only men heeded such advice.
I have named it Kuro, although some have taken to call it Tirukuro. Ian smiled. And what of yours? I am yet to give it a proper name, of course, Vishnu said slowly, but the name Atrashastra comes to mind. Do you think it is appropriate? Very, Ian nodded. Vishnu turned to look at him again. I have another name as well. Chanakya. Ian smiled. I guess you must be using pseudonym. My real name is Vallavan. Chanakya laughed. We are a pair, aren't we? Who knows? Perhaps someday our word will indeed reach the common people and benefit them. Vallavan nodded. One can always dream. After all, to dream is to achieve.
That was wonderful reading. After all, the dream is to achieve, isn't it? Fabulous. So let's start dreaming now.
Thank you for reading. That was lovely.
That's an absolutely lovely story, which I absolutely enjoyed reading that. We have Pranav to start the workshop now to say their comments about the story.
Hello. That was a good story. I want to talk about how the author set the scene. It was a good way of setting the scene because it showed like what happened in the background, as if like the night was alive, and it showed all the aspects of night. And then it then zoomed in on this one person who is our main character, and what he saw and in his perspective. And for the title, I think it fits perfectly because it's as if two minds are meeting and not the people, and as if they're talking to each other mentally without even talking, and as if they're like linked together.
Okay, that was lovely.
I think what Pranav wants to ask is,
so if I was to write a story, how would you suggest that I would name it?
Okay. How interested are you in history actually? Do you actually like history or?
Yeah, I yeah,
But the
I
kind
like
of history you read is different, right? In your schools,
yeah. I normally read about like British history.
British history and not so much Indian history. Okay. So what
Uh,
period are you doing right now?
we're doing like the 16 to 1700s and pirates and exploration.
Okay. So if I were you, I would start with a character that I really identify with. Someone I'm reading about who's a lot like me. So who have you read
Okay.
about a lot like you?
I don't know. All the pirates are like different from me. They're all like I don't know.
No, but okay. If they're not like you, then they must have some quality that you like.
Yeah, I like how some of them are daring and how like they'll do stuff even if it means their life is in risk.
Okay, they're dashing. They're not afraid to take risks.
Yeah.
Okay. So you could build a story with that. Pick a hero, or it could even be a heroine. Doesn't have to be
Okay.
just a guy. It could be a girl too. So pick someone like that. Give them a name and make it as authentic as possible because you're actually reading about them. So you should know
Okay.
when they lived, what city they were living in, what port they were
Okay.
in, what kind of ships they were in, what kind of attacks they did. Did they have cannons? They used bows and arrows. Were they guns? Who were they fighting with?
Yeah, so like research it. Well.
Yes, exactly. The more you research, the more authentic it is. Because you cannot just make something up out of the top of your head and then it sounds weird because nobody knows how real it is.
Yeah.
You've seen movies, you've read books. How does it feel like when something is real? You know, right?
Yeah,
When
it
the
like
when
it
yeah.
feels more it has a bigger impact on you
Why does it have a bigger impact?
because you can actually imagine it happening.
That's because you identify with them, right?
Yeah.
Something in what they do, something in how they look, something in how they
Mm.
decide. It makes you relate.
Yeah.
It makes them more real. So that is how you pick a character. That's how you pick a hero or a heroine. It doesn't even have to
Mm.
be a hero. Hero is not someone who just does the right things. They could be somebody who's like you,
Yeah.
but
Just a
you
normal
put them
person.
exactly, and you put them in a bizarre situation, a really weird
Mm.
place, and then imagine that's where history helps. Instead of you doing all the work, someone has already done all the work for you. It's all there already.
Yeah.
And so in 16th century, imagine where you're living. Where are you living? Just give me a general idea. You don't have to be specific.
Rugby.
Okay. So if you research that place, there would have been
Yeah.
someone, right? Some king or a pirate or
Yeah.
somebody who set fire to the police station or something, or maybe
Yeah.
even a school student or somebody who played rugby, and they would
Mm.
have something in common with you, except that they lived 300 or 400 years ago.
Yeah.
And if you read about them, you'll find out that you and they have something in common.
Mm.
So
And we
that's
can
how you
build on
build.
that.
Yes, that's how you build. And then you have a story, and then you know that person.
Okay.
Yeah.
And how about setting like the title up? I mean, like
You
choosing the title. How would you choose that?
you mentioned in this one, right? A meeting of minds.
Yeah.
You said that it made sense because it was about how two people connected mentally.
Yeah.
So when you're writing a story, that's how you pick a title. You pick whatever you relate to.
Ah, okay.
You're writing about a pirate who skipped school and
Mm.
smuggled himself aboard a ship or something. What would you give a title? How would you pick a title for that one?
Smuggled abroad.
Okay, that's how
Mm.
you do it. That's how you do it. And you have to think about the people you're writing for.
Yeah.
I mean,
Okay.
it doesn't make sense if you just put something in your head and then you read it out and they don't understand what you're trying to get at,
Mm.
right?
Okay.
So it needs to have a connection.
Mm. Okay.
Yeah. And don't give everything away.
Okay. Yeah.
Harini?
Hello.
Hi.
Okay, I've got some questions. Like,
Okay.
how did you develop the speech between Valluvar and Chanakya so well, as if you heard them talking in real life?
Okay. You know who they are?
Well, yeah.
Okay. So that's how I did it too. I read about them in school when I was younger than you, actually. Because when I studied, we had to learn the verses they wrote, Tirukural. You know how it is like. Just two small lines, and you basically have to memorize them every day. Our teachers would teach us this is what it means, this is what that means. Of course, it never made any sense to me because it was boring. I don't know. The Tamil was very difficult. It's not the kind of Tamil you talk at home, so I didn't understand most of it. And my teachers didn't know how to make it interesting. They didn't give me stories. They didn't tell me what Kalluvar was like. I had no idea what he was like. Why did he write these poems? Why did he choose 2 lines instead of 4? Why did he sit and write 1,330 verses? Why not just write 200 or 300 or 5,579? Why just that? What made him write? Who were his friends? How did he grow up? What were the people who he worked with? Who was this king? Did he have family? Did he have sisters or brothers? So I don't know. These things seemed much more important to me because if you know somebody, then you get interested in them, right?
Yeah.
You want to know about them, what they do, how they are. You want to become friends with them. You want to understand why they write these things. So I started out that way. I actually went in reverse. I learned everything, but I did not understand half of what I read. So I tried to learn more about Thiruvalluvar and Chanakya. And because I learned about them, you know, that's how I built the story. I went backwards.
Okay. You also developed the characters really good. Could you please name some tips or techniques to make the characters like flow smoothly in the story?
You said it yourself, get into their heads. If you want to write about who do you know best in your family, how is there someone you really know really well?
Well, I know myself really good.
Okay, put yourself in the character you're writing. If that's why you have to know what you're writing about. You cannot just randomly name a person and then start writing. Pick a name. Try to think about what they are like in their life. If there's Valluvar, if he's writing something like this, what kind of a person was he? Why would you do something like this? What do you do every day? You go to school, you do stuff, you do chores, you listen to your mother, you fight with your friends, I guess. Something. Why do you do the things you do? So when you start thinking about that, you get ideas about how to write. So the words just come. You don't have to think because you already know. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Excellent. Mitra?
Hi everyone. I'm just going to talk about the interesting aspects of the story. What I found really intriguing was like how the author develops like the story and how the setting is at the start of the story. So it's like the background and then the characters are zoomed in. And by using personification, it's like very interesting because the phrase like wink, the stars wink into existence, that's like very like real life. So it adds a touch of real lifeness to the story. A few questions I wanted to ask was which part, so we follow a dramatic arc like when writing a story, like the exposition and then the rising in action, climax, and then the fall in action. Which part of the story like do you really find interesting to write about?
Okay. So if you notice, all my stories tend to follow one little format. As in, I always give a twist in the end. So you don't really know the people who are in the story. It just feels like a conversation between two people. They just met. They seem to think really alike. They have a lot of things in common and they start talking about it. And then at the end of the story, you realize who they are. But the clues are all there right in the beginning. If you start, once you understand who they are, and then you go back to the start of the story and start reading it again, you'll realize that they're all already there. Everything is there. So if you put your mind to it, you can recognize who they are. So that's kind of what I move towards when I'm writing anything. I have a thing in mind about the people I'm writing about. It's always the people who make it interesting. If you just talk about, unless something is, the event you're writing about is really interesting, like a building exploding or I don't know, a plane going in flames or something, it's always the people. Connect with the people. So you have to get that in mind before you start. Then it kind of flows. Because you don't have to do anything to get the story going. They kind of take over, the characters take over. In a good story, that's how it always happens. You don't have to consciously do anything. It just, the story goes forward because they're doing all the talking and the thinking. And all you have to do is catch their thoughts and put them on paper.
So like, sorry, just one more question, please. So like the general building of a character is like when you introduce them, you tell the audience their name and then you talk about their personality. But what else could you give a hint to the reader before you actually develop them?
The thing is, when I'm writing, I'm usually writing for people who don't know these people. You may have read about them in, I don't know, books like Intricacies or even history books. Someone like Gandhi or I don't know, Winston Churchill, someone you're very familiar with, you've heard about them, but you don't know much about them, right? You read stuff. I mean, you come across them all the time, but it's not like you connect with them. You don't really, they're just people with, you see their pictures in books. They don't make much sense. Either they're all older people and they're talking about stuff you don't get, or you're just not interested. It's not like some Avengers stuff or anything. Just a reference point. So you need to find out what kind of people they were. And I usually give little hints about what they're like, who they might be. I try to bring a connection with stuff you already know. There are some things that people more or less know, like when India became independent, stuff like that. So if you're say I'm trying to write a story about the Indian tricolor, the flag, the Indian flag, but how many people know who designed the flag, who gave the colors, who came up with the idea to put an Ashoka Chakra in the middle? Yeah, that's stuff you don't know, right? You can't take it off the top of your head. So I usually bring a connection with the Independence Day. I bring in Mahatma Gandhi. I bring in people you know about. You can connect that way. Okay, I recognize this person. I recognize this stuff. Some of this I know. I've read about. So when I finally get to the point about the flag, you're in tune with the story. Get where I'm coming from. It's not difficult, connect with it. And you don't have this block in your head about it. History is boring. History is about people I don't know. I don't care. Who cares what did someone do in the 11th century? This is somebody like me. The person who designed the flag must obviously have loved drawing. He loved drawing. He loved colors. He loved messing about with design. He was painting saffron colors. He was painting white, blue, red, green, and he was experimenting with chakras. So I'm an artist. He's an artist. There's a connect there, right? Some minor connection, right? It doesn't matter when they lived and when you live. Still something that connects you. You get what they're trying to do. Maybe, who knows, maybe someday you'll get to design something as awesome as that. And it will fly everywhere and people will recognize you for that. That's it.
Thank you.
Does that answer your question?
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you.
We have Tanvi next. She has a question as well.
Hello, Pavithra Auntie. I want to say thank you for writing such lovely stories.
Well, thank you. Thank you for reading them.
I also want to ask you a question. Yeah. How do you get the ideas for writing your stories, and what inspires you?
Someone like you, actually. You inspire me because I really like you to know all the things I know, right? But if you're just going to study from books, that can get boring after a while. And even if you watch movies and read stories, unless you understand about the characters, it won't make much sense. And how am I ever going to feel what I feel? If I read about some amazing princess or some adventurous warrior, and I want you to feel the same things I feel, How am I going to get you to feel that? Only by writing it in a way that you get it, right? It has to make sense to you. You have to feel the same things. So that's my inspiration. I could see you, I guess. Readers like you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Next question is from Sriram.
Hi. Now, firstly, சொல்றேன் உங்களோட story was really, really good. I read it.
Thank you.
And also your art in this, it was really good. It was really appealing. First, can I just comment on the artwork, please?
Well, by all means, but the art was in the book was done by someone else, not me.
Okay.
Yeah. Yeah.
It really suits the story very well because you could tell because the colors in the surrounding environment, like the trees, the bushes, and the city that you can see nearby in the background, because they said your characters were in the outskirts of a big city, and the campfire, all of them are all colored in really nicely, and they really drag your eye, capture the attention of your eye around the scene. You can also tell that this is kind of based in India because of the art style, because this kind of art style is usually associated with more, instead of westernized, it's more Indian. Also, you could see the Ole from Ayyan or Tiruvalluvar, and you can really just get a sense like, oh, he like almost like a sneak peek of the big twist. And yeah, it's really well illustrated, and it really captures the very essence of the story.
I'll say thank you on behalf of the artist, because we all felt you have to work very closely with the artist to get that kind of output. Yeah.
Also, now can I ask you a few questions about this story and also generally your artwork?
Please do. And I love the way you pronounce Tamil. That's great.
Thank you. So your story in this was amazing, in how you captured the Tiruvalluvar and how his Tirukural in this kind of kids appeal. However, would you have thought maybe instead of having one large picture, to have smaller pictures in between the story to captivate the child audience? Because more pictures and more colorful will kind of grab their attention more.
That makes sense. I mean, the more pictures, it does looks nicer, and lots of kids are going to be attracted by pictures. But here's the thing: when you are publishing books, not everybody likes to lay out the kind of money you need. So you have to keep that in mind.
Yeah.
I would love to put 24 pictures. I'm an artist. I love drawing. If I could just sketch characters all over the page. But that doesn't work when I meet my publisher, and they're more likely to, you know what, we don't want pictures at all, because that way we cut costs. But then, so I have to argue with them. No, we need pictures. We need pictures. It doesn't make sense without pictures. So it's a delicate balance. You have to work with everyone.
Okay.
You have to work with the artist. You have to work with the editor, with the publisher, everybody to get the finished product.
Yeah. Also, as a representative for any children who are interested in art, how would you recommend we should draw in a style that we are? How would you develop your style of art? So, how would you encourage people like kids to develop their style?
The thing is, if you want to be an artist, it's kind of inbuilt. You're interested in art for the sake of it, right? You don't need someone else to come and tell you, take a paper, take a pencil, and do this, doodle, draw stick figures, or draw skeletons, or something. You do it by yourself. I'm guessing you are an artist. You are an artist, right?
Yeah.
And you do it without someone telling you to sit down and draw for the next 2 hours.
I do it without someone telling me, yeah.
Yes. And how many hours do you draw in a day?
An hour or two, maybe 3. Yeah, 3 hours.
Okay. And I used to draw all the time. All the time, in all my notebooks, in every single notebook when I was your age, every single one of my notebooks had doodles. My teachers used to yell at me because all the margins were filled with stick figures and ladies and noses. I had a thing for noses. I don't know why. I always used to draw noses. Noses all the time. And then I went through a phase when I hated noses, and none of my faces would have noses. My mother was horrified because I draw these round figures, faces, huge eyes, lips, but no nose. Noses offended me. I hated noses. But that's how you find your style. My mother was horrified because she thought I don't know, gone nuts.
Yeah.
Why is this crazy kid of mine drawing faces without noses? She tried to teach me anatomy. People have noses. This is how they breathe. They have nostrils, and I never listened to it. For me, faces without noses were the thing. I went through an entire phase where I did not draw noses at all. That's how you find your thing. Maybe you like people without arms or hair, or only people who wear spectacles. They belong to an exclusive group. So that sort of thing. You draw and you draw and you draw. Instead of drawing 3 hours a day, try drawing for 10. Don't limit yourself.
So the small imperfections, that's what makes up a good style, kind of.
There is no imperfection in art. Don't listen to anybody who tells you that.
Okay.
Whatever you draw, that is how it is. Because you are evolving. You'll be drawing something different 10 years from now. This is not how you're going to be, right? 10 years from now, your face is going to be different. You'll be a different person.
Yeah.
So why does it make any sense that your art has to stay the same? Keep drawing everywhere. Paste papers on the wall. Keep doodling, keep scribbling. Don't stop.
Okay. Thank you.
Daksha, you around, Daksh? Daksh has the next question for you, Pavithra.
Hi. First, I'd like to say that I like the way at the end you maintain that surprise element until the end of the story.
Thank you.
With the twist. My first question is, do you plan your endings before you actually start writing?
I do. I do plan the ending. Because unless you know how the story is going to end, you can't start it. In real life, that doesn't happen, right? You have any idea what's going to happen tomorrow?
No.
நாளைக்கு என்ன நடக்க போகுதுன்னு தெரியுமா? நாளானைக்கு?
No.
But கதை எதிர்ச்சே தெரியும்ல? You can plan your endings, right? நம்ம endings plan பண்ணலாம்ல?
ஆமா.
நம்ம பார்க்குற சினிமால அந்த மாதிரி பிளான் பண்ணலாம்ல? You know how it's going to end.
ஆமா.
So at least in stories you can do that. That is how you keep the twist. Illana, you can't plan the twist. You have to know the ending before you start.
Okay. My third question is, why did you end the story in speech instead of a normal paragraph?
Why not? Is there a rule that says I have to end it in a paragraph?
No.
No rules, right?
No.
No rules. So I didn't end it that way. Besides, paragraph now is boring. Speech is easier.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Nikita, you here for the next question, dear?
Hello.
Hi.
Hi. So first of all, I'd like to say that I really like the story and how the historic bits actually educated people who perhaps didn't know about the characters. And also my question is, how do you do your research? So do you use a variety of sources, and do you use older sources or more recent sources?
I do do a lot of research. For a historical story like this one, I mean it's a small story, but I read at least 4 or 5 books to get to where I have to. And I can't trust Wikipedia or online resources for obvious reasons, because they can be tampered with. I mean, if you're going to Wiki for everything, you have to trace the sources that they cite there. They have a list of websites and links, right, from where they take their news items. So those have to be really authentic. A reputed newspaper or some journal studies or some online library which has the books I need. So I don't stick to one source. I read at least 4 or 5 books before I can get the information I need. I need to be really accurate in what I'm writing about. I cannot just make up stuff, because this is history. If it was a fantasy or some social story, I won't have to worry that much. But because this is history, I have to be very careful. I cannot just write some random stuff and claim that it's true. It has to be true.
There are two kids who are waiting to ask the questions. Anandita, you go first, darling. Anandita?
Hi.
Hi.
So I just wanted to say I really liked your story and the way it was structured.
Thank you.
I just wanted to ask the question about why you like to reveal all the surprises at the end, or maybe put them in the middle, or like why do you like to reveal them at the end?
If I did reveal them at the beginning, how would that make you feel? Imagine that you knew who they were right in the beginning of the story. Would that change things for you?
I wouldn't say it would change my interest. I would just say it would make the rest of the story a little bit boring.
So there you have it. You have the answer. You already know how it's going to end. You know who these people are. So maybe you stick to the end of the story because you know you're the kind of person who finishes the job, but it wouldn't be very interesting, would it?
Yeah, like you say, I always plan my, like when I write, I always like to do my endings first and then do my beginnings.
And also, don't you think it's much more interesting when you know that there's something big coming at the end?
Yeah.
You know that there's a twist at the end. You know something big is going to explode in your face.
Yeah.
Instead of just a stream of consciousness, it's just one big paragraph from beginning to end.
Yeah.
Some stories are good like that, but this kind of story is better this way, I think.
Yeah. Thank you.
Yeah. Thank you.
We have one last question from Ramya Ganapati, our very own cake creativist.
Oh, okay.
She's asking a question on behalf of all the parents here.
Can you hear me?
Yeah.
Yeah. Hello, ma'am. How are you?
I'm good. நீங்க எப்படி இருக்கீங்க?
நல்லா இருக்கேன். Just a small question. How we should create that interest in children for story writing, you know, as a parents, what we should do?
Oh, wow.
So we always tell them to read, okay? But I think what I feel is we are not giving more importance for creative writing, even though people are doing it, but from நீங்க என்ன சொல்றீங்க? What advice you can tell us,
I would also start kids with reading first, because that's how I started. But you can start by asking them to write. The thing with writing is that there doesn't have to be restrictions. இப்படிதான் எழுதணும், அப்படிதான் பண்ணணும், you have to write at 1,000 words, அந்த மாதிரிலாம் எதுவுமே இல்லை. Just start them off by saying, describe whatever you see in front of you, something that is very simple, in 50 words or 100 words. Just write whatever you can see. I tutor a lot of kids in the 9, 10, 11 age group. So அவங்களுக்கு வந்து in their school English lessons, they have exercises like write a short note about this or that or something. This is the problem they have. They don't know what to write. என்ன எழுதுறது மேம், நீங்க எழுதி கொடுங்க அப்படிப்பாங்க.
Yes.
They basically get to do it for me. I don't know what to write. அப்படிப்பாங்க. Don't make me do the work. This is supposed to be for you. So I would literally tell them, look in this direction, look in front of you, tell me whatever you see. எடுத்த உடனே எழுதுனா they'll freeze. It's like the word write. It's like a magic word that makes them freeze. Their brain stops working. They have a brain fart. So I literally tell them, describe, talk to me, tell me what you see. There is a fan la indu ottadai thongudhu, ottadai pinadi selanthi irukku, abbi this இந்த மாதிரி they'll start. So I'll ask them to say, describe everything, now write everything. நீ என்ன சொன்னியோ அப்படியே எழுது. Set it down in words. Suddenly it's like a door has opened. So that's all it is. So then they realize that it's not that difficult after all.
I think to cultivate that, the create that interest is I think they read, but sometimes they lack that interest in writing, so
one trick that you can use is, say this also I use. Say they're describing something, say a hall la vandu corner of the room there's one sofa, the sofa has 4 legs and that sort of thing. And then I asked them, imagine that there's suddenly a hand creeping out from behind one of the legs.
Okay.
Yeah, something like that. So then they either go in a horror story direction, or they go in a cockroach, or there's a ghost, or their mummy is under the chair, something. So you set the ball rolling, and then they start imagining, and then you can't stop them. That is a different story. Yeah. that is one trick I use often.
Okay. Thank you so much, ma'am. Thank you.
Thank you. Pavithra, you listened to all the questions so much patiently and answered all our questions.
So I have to thank them for asking such beautiful questions.
I want you to summarize for us in a little short kind of a format for us to all understand. How do we go about writing a story?
How do you go about writing a story? Wow, that is a huge, but it's also actually pretty simple.
Just to summarize your work in 10 minutes or something for us to kind of take home message for us.
I think what really need when you're thinking about writing a story is that you want to make things interesting for other people. I mean, my life is pretty ordinary, and I think we all have ordinary moments, right? You do routine things, you do the same things again and again and again, and after a point, it just becomes stable and stabilized, and there's nothing you look forward to. So when you're writing a story, you kind of make things more interesting. You try to imagine different kind of life, different people. That's why I pick on history so much, because it's about a country that I don't know. I don't know anything about this time period. Who lived 1,000 years ago or 5,000 years ago? I try to read up about them, and then I try to find something that connects me and them. That's the way I make things interesting in my own life. We all of us do the same things. We eat, we drink, we do our homework, we do our household chores, we wash clothes, we wash vessels, we do our job, we sit at the computer, all that sort of thing. But writing, gives you something else. And it also leaves something behind that is uniquely you. Nobody else can tell the kind of stories that you can tell. Nobody else has your vision. Nobody else has your take on life. So whatever you write, that's just you. That's you alone. It's like the essence of yourself. So in the end, that's what writing is all about. You leave a little bit of yourself behind, just like our kids. Yeah.
Thank you. Do you think you'll be ready for a Q&A session now?
Sure, absolutely.
A couple more questions. Mithun and Mitra, are you ready? Mithun and Mitra?
Can I go first?
Yeah, please.
Hi. I've got a question for you. So,
please. Yeah.
So I read in the Hindu newspaper that from your childhood that you wanted to be an archaeologist.
Yes, I did.
How did that change?
Well, here's the thing. One of my teachers actually told me that I couldn't make any money if I became an archaeologist. But the real reason was that she told me that if you like something, then you should not make it a job. If you really like something, don't make it into a career, is what she said. So I took that advice, but at the same time I didn't. I took to writing about archaeology. I kind of sidetracked a little. So maybe I didn't become an archaeologist in real life, but I still ended up writing about people who lived in other times. In a way, I dig up stories. I don't dig up artifacts. I don't dig up bones. I dig up stories. That's what I'm doing.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Mitra, do you want to go next?
Yes, please. So I read in an article that your favorite historical character was Princess Kundavi from Raja. So that's Raja and sister.
Yeah.
Yes. Because stories like more being written now, does this still remain the same, or have you got any new characters of your favorite?
I think I'm creating my own characters now. It used to be, it still is in a way. Still is Princess Kundavi because such a strong woman. And you have to remember that when she lived, it was the men who made all the decisions. It was her father, it was her brother, It was some commander-in-chief of some army. Women didn't get to do much. It was rare enough for them to be educated, let alone make their own decisions. They could not decide who they married. They could not decide where they were going to settle in life. Her parents would tell her, "You're marrying this person at this age, and then you're leaving and going and settling somewhere else." Even for me, it was not all that different, even when I grew up. So I kind of admire someone who made that decision. Kundavai did not let her parents decide who she was going to marry. She fell in love and she married whoever she wanted to marry.
Yeah, we saw the film.
Yeah. So that was her choice. She was so strong about what she wanted to do. She decided where she was going to be. She decided what she would do with her assets. She had assets in her own name. That's a huge thing. So now I guess I'm now creating characters like that. My own characters who I can be inspired from. Yeah.
Next, we have Venkat Ananta Sivam. I think it's Anandita again. She's got another question.
Hi, Gomate.
Hi, Srividya.
Hi. Hello, ma'am.
Hi.
Hi. Like like the way how kids conceive a story, I feel somewhat it's different from back in India, how it's more of fiction, and then sometimes you can't kind of relate to now படிக்கிற books வச்சு பார்த்ததுல like சிலதெல்லாம் ரொம்ப fictional-ஆ இருக்கும். So that's how they train the kids here, even அவங்களோட stories எல்லாமே. So you think that's the right way to go forward? இல்லனா நம்ம ஊர்ல more of like we start with நம்மளோட புராணம்ஸ் and like more moral value based stories and the madri irko. So which one do you think it's probably for a budding writer ninga which one you think would work better?
The thing is, now when I wrote in Chanda Mama, so it's basically it was geared towards an Indian audience, Indian children and Indian parents, I guess. But now I generally don't tend towards moral. When you attach a moral tag to it, history itself can be boring. You tell them this is the historical story, na they'll start yawning. So I don't favor tags. Don't put that in their head. History or moral or Purana or mythology. Start off the story. I start off the story usually with at a completely unexpected point. Even if I'm telling a mythology story or some very well-known character, I'll start off with the fact that they don't know. Say I don't know if you are saying something about the Ramayana or something.
அப்படி சொல்ல மேம் லைக் மோர் ஆஃப் இப்ப எப்படி சொல்றது, இப்ப நீங்க சொன்ன மாதிரி சந்தா மாமா, அம்புலி மாமா, ராமி காமிக்ஸ் நம்ம சோ அந்த மாதிரி இருக்கிறதுக்கும் இங்க மோர் ஆஃப் இப்போ ப்ராப்ளி ஒரு பிரைமரி ஸ்கூல் ரீடிங் பாத்தீங்கன்னா நிறைய like fictional more to do with the local culture and so I feel that shift is there, like from place to place it's more relevant.
Local culture can you give me an example?
Local culture like like the words that probably might seem funny with the children, so avangaloda day to day activities like school what they think eppadi irpanga. So I that's my personal opinion. So and the madri da I've seen, so it's a kind of a shift irukku. So that anala I thought it's worth asking you, so how now works.
It's true, that is the way you relate to kids. Avangalukku whatever they're familiar with, whatever they're likely to connect to, that is how they're going to keep going. If it is too avangalukku romba sambandhame illada vishayamna, they won't relate to it. They're not going to be interested enough. So that is also the approach I would take. Even if it is history, I try to find something that will connect them to this life, this era, this day, this routine. Even if I'm writing a story about Chandragupta Maurya, I wrote it about him also writing exams. He was basically a kid when he came to the throne.
Correct.
So even when he has in Takshashila University, he had to go and write exams. He had to go and study. He was given punishments after that, because that is true.
Yeah, right.
It probably was how it happened. You cannot just randomly become king one day. He has to, in fact, he probably had to give more exams. Now, 10 exam எழுதினா அவர் 20 exam எழுதிப்பாரு, because he had to train himself in so many subjects. Probably Greek and Latin and all that because he had to deal with Alexander Pogai. So that is, and in the end, I'll give the twist about, oh, you know what, this is actually Chandragupta Maurya, not some random kid.
Okay.
I kind of use that approach myself to give them today's whatever exists today,
Yes.
but you give it to attach a historical
thing.
Yeah.
And one more thing, இப்போ like ஒரு ஷார்ட் ஸ்டோரின்னு சொல்றோம் இல்ல, ஒரு ஃபில்ம் பேஸ்ட் ஸ்டோரிஸ் இல்ல ஒரு ஹிஸ்டரி பேஸ்ட் ஸ்டோரி, அப்புறம் ஒரு ஸ்டோரி எழுதுறதுக்கும் லைக் யூ திங்க் தெர் இஸ் அ டிஃப்ரெண்ட் அப்ரோச் டு திட் அப்ரோச் இருக்கா, இல்ல எல்லாமே லைக் யூ ஸ்டார்ட் வித் த சேம் மைண்ட் செட்ஸ், ஆர் இட் வேரிஸ் ஃப்ரம் லைக் அந்த ஜானருக்கு தகுந்த மாதிரி அந்த
I definitely use different. எல்லா ஸ்டோரிக்கும் ஒரே டெக்னிக் கிடையாது. ஏன்னா ஒன் ஸ்டோரி வந்து it will start like once upon a time அப்படிங்கிற மாதிரி ஸ்டார்ட் ஆகும். I often use a technique which is like letters between characters. Like எல்லாமே லெட்டர் ஃபார்மேட்லயே இருக்கும், டியர் சோ அண்ட் சோ, இல்லைன்னா இமெயில் ஃபார்மேட்ல இருக்கும், இல்லைன்னா பழைய காலமா தான் லைக் ஓலைச்சுவடி, they'll write in palm leaves and they'll exchange letters, அது மாதிரி இருக்கும். From the letters you have to guess who is writing to whom.
Okay.
So illana they will be like a diary entry, like one novella I wrote, Harshavardhana, was all about diary entries. This kid 14 வயசு பையன், he's 14 years old, he's writing about his family. My father did this, my mother did this, my elder brother has gone on a hunting expedition, I don't know when he'll come back, I miss him, I fight with him but I still miss him, he always takes away all my clothes and all that sort of thing. But he ends up being Harshavardhana actually. When he's 14, he's 15, he's 14, he's 15 when he loses his parents. He's 16 when he becomes the emperor. But it's all, every major event in his life, he writes as a diary.
Okay.
He could have written that. It's possible. There's always that thing. Yeah.
Yes. Thank you, ma'am.
Thank you.
I think we have two short questions. Pranav, do you want to go first? And then it's Lakshmi Prabha Srinivasan. Pranav, do you want to go next?
Okay. So my question is, when you were growing up, who was your favorite author? And now, would that person still be your favorite author, or would you have a new one?
My favorite author. Have you read any of Enid Blyton's stories?
Yeah. I've read the famous 5 and Secret 7 ones.
So she was kind of the in thing when I was growing up, when I was your age. Her stories were our go-to for everything. So
okay.
yeah. And then there was Kalki, of course. Enid Blyton was in English and Kalki was for Tamil.
Yeah. And would that person still be your favorite author now, or would you have like developed more interest?
Absolutely. I still go back to that.
Okay.
Because I remember what it was like reading it then.
Yeah.
I still go back to that.
Memories. Thank you.
Thank you.
Last question, Lakshmi Prabha. Lakshmi Prabha Srinivasan.
How do you drag readers into your book? What words do you use to make them more excited to continue reading it?
Like I said, I use cliffhangers. I end the stories with a twist. And I also try to make them short. Because, unless the characters are really interesting, you cannot just write endlessly. You can't write paragraphs and paragraphs because people will fall asleep somewhere in the middle. So you have to keep it interesting. Some of my readers tell me that I tend to use really long sentences with pauses and pauses. So I'm trying to cure myself of that habit. I have to write shorter sentences. So yeah, that is how I do it.
Pavithra, that was absolutely wonderful. I cannot believe how the last almost 1.5 hours have gone by.
Thank you. I cannot believe it myself.
Up on another offer, actually, around your skills around being an artist. Do you think you would be able to do another workshop for us at a later date on miniature painting?
Sure, absolutely.
We could dream about painting it too.
Sure. You can. You can even try Zen doodling. That's something I do as well.
Excellent. I'll take your word for it, and we'll be booking you in soon.
Thank you so much. It was lovely.
Pavithra, it's been a spellbinding hour and a half. The thing which I'm sure all the children have picked up is you can have your passion, you can have your hobbies, and you can constantly explore and develop each one into fantastic outcomes like what you have done with your blogs, with your books, with your translating, with your art. Interestingly, she said she's not an archaeologist, but she is an amateur archaeologist. She goes around visiting old temples and excavation sites, but she's being very modest. But you're also not stopping exploring and stretching your talent, are you?
No, I'm not.
So can I get you to finish off before we thank you to sing a verse for us? Your latest passion is singing the Nalayira Divya Prabandham verses.
Oh my, yeah.
I don't want to put you on a spot. If you're not ready to sing, I'll play it.
No, I can sing, but this is all new to me. So let me. So shall I start?
Yeah. You waiting?
Vaiyam Tagaliya Paadadale Neyyaga Veyyak Kadiron Vilakkaga Seyyach Sudaraliyanadikke Soottineen Sonnale Idaraali Neengugave. That's actually verse 1 from Poigai Alvar's Mudal Tiruvandar.
Fantastic. Thank you very, very, very much.
Thank you.
I'm sure you have inspired a lot of future Pavithra Srinivasans, future Amish Tripathis and Jeffrey Archers. We would like to invite all the young children who are here to give it a crack at writing a story. Pavithra's kindly agreed to look at them and give feedback and judge them as well. So it will be a story for 999 words on the theme Dream to Achieve. And if you can send us your entries to inathena@gmail, we will collate all of them and send it to Pavithra. And please get them to us by end of July. And hopefully we will announce the winners on the 15th of August, which is the Independence Day of India. One question nobody's asked you, but you have told that repeatedly, Pavithra, is most of your written work, other than translations, is focused on history. In your own words, can you emphasize the need for knowing our history to the children, please, before we close?
The thing with history is that I grew up thinking, and a lot of people told me that history is kind of pointless because all this happened, everything happened a long time ago. So what's the point of learning all that now? It's not like you're going to use it today. That's completely wrong, in my opinion, because history is probably the only subject you keep using every single day. Everything that you know now is because of what you learned in the past. All our lessons, it could be something as simple as reading or writing. Even that has a history. Every single thing that we do has a history, and know that only because someone else recorded all that and passed down that knowledge to you. So to say that history is pointless, that is completely ridiculous. History is the only thing that keeps us relevant. You don't have a future if you don't have a past. That's how important history is. So, yeah.
Thank you so much, Pavithra, for your time with us.
Thank you for having me.
I absolutely enjoyed the last 1.5 hours.
Me too.
We have our next program for next week on Saturday. It will be a workshop on photoshopping. Sriram, do you want to say a few words about it?
Okay, hi. My name's Sriram, and I generally enjoy editing, animation, and coding. My workshop will be on Photoshop and editing pictures. I'll aim to be more comedic about it. So I kind of want to engage with you guys as the audience. So for the event, I was thinking of editing a few photos that you sent to me with a given theme, a topic to edit on. Please just give me please just send me a few photos and a topic to edit in. And hopefully, if you're interested on learning Photoshop, drawing, editing, and that sort of thing, join in next Saturday if you're interested. Hopefully, you'll be there. Thank you.
So Sriram will do the flyer, and we will circulate it to all our friends and family, where the contact details will be there. So you could forward the flyer on. And for the short story, please make your entries to inayathina@gmail.com, and all of the stories will be collated and sent across to Pavithra Srinivasan for individual comments and for judging as well. And the winner will be announced on Independence Day. Next, I think we have some important birthdays that we have gone by.
Yeah. சென்ற மாதம் பிறந்த நாள் கொண்டாடிய நம் தமிழ் நெஞ்சங்கள் சாத்விகா குலசேகர், ஆகாஷ் ரத்னம், ஆர்த்தி, இனியா மற்றும் அருண் இவர்களை நம் இணையத்திணையின் சார்பாக பிறந்தநாள் வாழ்த்துக்களை தெரிவித்துக் கொள்வதில் மகிழ்ச்சி அடைகிறோம். நன்றி.
Hope all the birthday boys and girls had a great birthday party. Unfortunately, we couldn't celebrate it all together. So we should have a blast when this lockdown settles down. Thank you, Pavithra. For the last 1.5 hours have really flown away, and I absolutely enjoyed the program. You answering the questions to the varied and interesting questions from our kids. I believe the whole universe is actually conspiring only to give its best to those who want to dream to make it work. Look around us. We are not alone. Let us dream together and make it all come true. The dream is to achieve. One can always dream. See you all next week in another fabulous program with Sriram, and keep dreaming until then. Have a fabulous evening. Vanakkam.